IndyCar is dubbed to be a spec series, and under the hood, there are some differences that could change the phrase one way or another. But there is one stark difference that's plastered on every car on the broadcast: the engine manufacturer. In a series where the cars look so similar to one another, why does it matter what engine a team runs, and why is it shown as such a big deal? As I mentioned before, IndyCar is said to be a spec series, meaning that the cars are pretty much the same from team to team. They all run the same Dallara chassis, which is the current rendition, the Dallara IR18, which is an aero package on the existing Dallara DW12, which has been used since 2012. This means the car's fundamental shape, cockpit, and base aerodynamics are the same across the entire grid, but the engine is where teams have a choice. There are two engine manufacturers currently in IndyCar, being Honda and Chevrolet, and although they have to follow the same guidelines of a 2.2-liter V6 engine, they do have some wiggle room that the engines are favored in certain scenarios. For example, the Chevy units have been known to get some more horsepower, whereas the Honda units tend to get better fuel mileage. I know this sounds like a very small difference, but when the chassis are so similar to one another, this is one of the few areas a team can gain an edge off of a decision alone. But the performance benefit is definitely not the only driving factor behind these choices. Now, if we look at the grid currently, it's a pretty even split, with 12 full-time Chevy entries and 13 full-time Honda entries. If you'll notice, this is divided by the teams, and are also the root of technical partnerships as well. Teams like Meyer-Shank have a close relationship with Honda, and are technical partners currently with Chip Ganassi Racing, and were partners in the past with Andretti, all of which are Honda powered. Same goes for Chevy, where AJ Foyt is in partnership with Penske, and in the past, Hunko's Hollinger was with McLaren, all Chevy powered. If you're unfamiliar with technical partnerships, these are full-on alliances between teams to share engineering knowledge, setup data, and extra support with one another, which will usually occur between a smaller team and a bigger team, in order for both to benefit. For example, a team like Dale Coyne right now can massively benefit from the data with Andretti, but Andretti gets to put their driver, Dennis Hauger, in one of their cars. Make sense? Anyways, that means the engine choice doesn't just make a performance difference, but it also kind of changes the entire ecosystem surrounding a team. In general, all this started around a decade ago, when Chevy made their way back into IndyCar. 2012 was the year that brought the new Dallara DW12, but it was also the year that changed the engines. Prior to 2012, every team had been using the same Honda V8 engine, making it a complete spec engine across the board. This was the case in 2006 when Toyota and Chevy ended their IndyCar operations, but the changes in the engines in 2012, going back to a V6, brought Chevrolet back into the mix. Throughout that time, because Honda was the team putting out engines, while no one else was, they kept relationships that were uninterrupted, meaning Chevy was kinda on the back foot. But as you see now, they've kinda caught up. Now, even more interestingly, there was a period from 2015 to 2017 where the choice in engine manufacturer did affect other things, being the aero kit, because Honda and Chevy started developing them, and the teams that were signed with them had to use them. This was actually a very high impact decision performance-wise, as not only was one clearly better than the other, but it also came with huge cost increases. In the scenarios I mentioned, the difference in engine power is so minimal that it's not making a crazy gap, but the aero kits did. The Honda engine was slightly stronger, but the Chevy powered cars were just so much more dominant because of how good their aero kits were. The only chance Honda teams could really have to compete were on ovals, because the aero kits mattered less, and the extra horsepower they had made a bigger difference. It was a very interesting era to watch because although it may not have been the most fair per se, it had a development shift that IndyCar has gone away from. Anyways, the specific aero kits were frozen in 2017, and starting in 2018, all teams would go back to using the same aero kit, because not only would it help competition, but it would also significantly reduce costs for teams. A big part of this is why certain people always associate different engine manufacturers with certain types of tracks, like saying ovals are more Honda suited or something like that, because back then it actually did make a difference, but nowadays not as much, but people do like to keep the memories and apply them to the current age. Well, now that we know there really is a minimal difference in performance, and relationships are a big factor in choosing which manufacturer to go with, what are the real main driving factors? Well, to start with, the relationships that can be built are more than just the technical alliances. They work with the factory as well. In long-standing and good partnerships, manufacturers can get involved in funding, marketing support, and driver development programs to help teams out. For example, we've seen the Honda racing livery on Alex Palou's car as an ode to the relationship his team at Chip Ganassi has with Honda. Another example is Linus Lundqvist signing with Honda as a development driver just this past week, and it can really give him a shot at getting a seat again. This will come into play massively starting in 2028 when OEM charters make their way into IndyCar, but I'll get to that in a second. Loyalty and trust are built through these ties, which is why teams can make alliances with other teams, as they kind of have a mutual middleman that connects them. Therefore, that's why pretty much every partnership has the same engines, because as much as it benefits the teams, it also benefits Honda and Chevy to see that the teams powered by them help propel each other up the standings. Also, because of these long-standing relationships, teams just don't switch their engine manufacturer year to year. Think of it more as a long-term marriage than a simple business deal, as it's not impossible to get out of, but you just can't be switching every year. Now, I've talked about these companies and why they're so vital to IndyCar, but why are they interested in being here? Chances are you know Honda and Chevrolet more as road car companies, rather than just being racing conglomerates, and they benefit from their time in Indy to their larger goal in the automotive industry. Connecting on-track performance and development to road cars does actually kind of work as a sort of showroom marketing technique. Although it may not get to everyone, you can't lie that if you see Honda or Chevrolet producing great racing engines, that it would definitely at least end up bettering your opinion of them as a whole. So in a roundabout way, success in motorsports can be used as a marketing front, but IndyCar isn't the only series that they do that in. Honda has a huge involvement in sports car racing and recently flirted with the idea of joining NASCAR, as well as being prominent in F1 with Red Bull in the past, and now with Aston Martin. Chevy also has a diverse market under the General Motors umbrella, with Cadillac in hypercars and now in F1, and Chevy in NASCAR, amongst plenty of other things. Both of these companies see benefit in Indy, but not only Indy. But their will to stick in IndyCar is actually contingent on one another. Like I mentioned, in the era of Honda-only engines, a lot less marketing value is offered when the full field is running one company's units. Competition between Honda and Chevy provides more marketing commitments and a bigger emphasis by the broadcast to depict who powers who. In a way, it's not necessarily like IndyCar needs Honda and Chevy, or Honda and Chevy need IndyCar, it just goes both ways. Anyways, a huge change coming up with these companies is the big OEM charter in 2028. If you're unfamiliar with the charter system, it's a newer IndyCar system giving teams guaranteed entries at races, with the only exception being the Indy 500. Not every team can get one, which is a big reason why Prema is no longer around, so it's not just like it's easy to get, but also every team's allowed a maximum of 3 charters, which is why we've seen teams like Andretti and Ganassi downsize in recent years. But the OEM charter allows both Honda and Chevy to have an entry of their own, which is completely unprecedented. The way this works is a team can work in collaboration with the manufacturer to bring a third entry to the existing 2-car team, or they can enter independently. This represents a deeper involvement with the team and sport than ever before, and it allows these entries to have direct feedback to the factory. At the moment, Honda's plans are to enter with a third car for Myers-Shank, as they already have deep relationships in IMSA, so further working together makes a lot of sense. As for Chevy, their plans are a bit more unknown. They could partner with the 2-car Chevy team, which includes AJ Foyt, ECR, or Juncos Hollinger, or go their own way. They don't necessarily have as deep ties with any of those teams as Shank does with Honda, so nothing really seems too obvious yet. If anything, a lot of people have speculated that these OEM charters are an effort to keep Honda and Chevrolet around. A lot of manufacturers have gravitated towards F1, and if either company were to back out, IndyCar would be in a much worse place, but this move gives them more involvement. Going from technical partnerships to direct involvement puts a lot more on the table than prior. Anyways, what looked like a simple emblem on the same identical chassis is actually a product of a long-term relationship that's played a much bigger role than you may think. Forgotten aero arms race, ongoing partnerships, and high-stakes marketing, there's a lot more behind the logo. As Honda and Chevy become more embedded in the IndyCar structure, do you think it's the right call?